Let me ask you something. Are you dead? Might seem like a silly question, but millions of Chinese people are paying to have an app ask them this exact question. And the background is, well, you can probably guess, not silly at all. The app is aimed at people living alone who fear nobody will notice if something happens to them. It was launched in May of last year and has since become hugely popular across China.
One tap a day to show you're safe. This is China's most downloaded paid app right now, and it's called Are You Dead? If a user doesn't check in within 48 hours, the app automatically alerts their chosen contacts. Marketed as a safety tool, it's designed for people who live alone and want a little extra safety.
The main potential users are the elderly, who are not so familiar with social media. The app only needs a simple check-in, so it's relatively easy to use.
In 2024, about 20% of households in China were people living alone, up from 15% 10 years earlier, according to official data. More people in China are living alone because fewer people are getting married, and more older adults now live by themselves after their children move out. For many of them, the people they see most often aren't family at all, but co-workers.
If you have a job, your boss might know something is wrong before your family or friends do.
By 2030, China could have 200 million single-person households, over 30% of all homes. A stark reminder that in a hyper-connected world, modern loneliness is quietly becoming the norm.
To talk more about this, I'm joined by Dr. Jean Twenge. She's a professor of psychology and has tracked changes in social behavior over time. She's also the author of the book Generations, The Real Difference Between Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, Boomers, and Silence, and what they mean for America's future. Welcome to DW. Now, I want to start by asking you, how do you explain the popularity of this app?
Well, really, people are feeling so disconnected these days. And you would think people would be feeling more connected given all the ways we have to communicate electronically. But people are not spending as much time in person. They're not calling each other on the phone as much. And people feel that need to check in with others because we have that feeling of disconnection.
But it's not checking in with others, right? It's checking in with an app. What does it tell you about the state of our societies and the fabric that holds us all together that so many people seem to have a true fear of dying unnoticed?
Yeah, it's really tragic that we've reached this point of social disconnection and loneliness. So one of the things that I do is work with these big surveys of people that go back decades, and people are much more likely to say that they're lonely now than they were in the 90s or in the 2000s. And that's probably because they're spending a lot less time talking to people in person as opposed to online. And we see this especially with older people. So in Japan, for example, there's been a lot of reporting about older people who, similar to this app, will have a signal to their neighbors that if I don't open my curtains, that means I've passed away. It's really tragic.
Yeah. Millennials, which I am a part of, were the last generation born into an analog world. Are the younger generations truly lonelier, or is their loneliness just more visible? Are they more open about it? What is it?
Well, it looks like it's not just being more open about it. We know that from lots of surveys of mental health. So Gen Z, the generation after millennials, those born roughly 1995 to 2009, are much more likely to be depressed. They were more likely to be depressed as adolescents, and they're more likely to be depressed now as young adults compared to millennials at the same age. And sadly, that also lines up with behaviors like self-harm and suicide. So in those cases, we know that it's not just being more willing or open to talk about these issues, they're also experiencing these issues more.
Would you say that the definition of loneliness has changed since you started monitoring this topic over the past years?
I don't think so. I think people know what loneliness is and how it feels. And connecting with others online can create some level of connection, but it doesn't reach the level of emotional connection that you feel talking to someone in real time or being in the same room with them. And we know that that's much better for loneliness to actually be with people. And that time, spending time with people in person, has been cut in half among U.S. teens and young adults, including by some of the best data that we have.
Yeah. Who is most at risk then of experiencing loneliness? Because one can also feel lonely while surrounded by people in a social setting. So is it really the people who are more isolated? Is it people with special sensitivities? What has your research taught you?
It's really both. So certainly some people are more inclined to feel things like anxiety and depression and loneliness more acutely than other people. But loneliness also has a strong relationship to the connections that you have with other people and how those connections are built. So older people can be vulnerable to loneliness because they're more likely to live alone. But we're seeing really high levels of loneliness among teens and young adults. And that's a population where we never used to see loneliness, because hanging out with your friends at those ages was always the standard. And that is no longer true in the age of smartphones and social media.
Many of the traditional institutions that promote a sense of belonging are in decline. You know, we're looking at churches, schools, universities, clubs, participation in traditions. People are more locked into their own reality on their phones. Can technology fill that gap to some extent, give them a sense of belonging, a sense of community, or can that real life interaction really not be substituted by anything virtual?
Yeah, there's really that competition. And you put up, say, social media against being with a friend in person, there really is a competition in terms of the emotional connection that's involved. Now, if people use social media or the internet to, learn information or, find out more about an identity they have or a group that they have, they can absolutely do that. But it should be used as a venue to then set up more real-time communication or in-person meetups, which is where you're going to get the true emotional connection that is going to lower feelings like loneliness.
Thanks for your insights. That was Dr. Jean Twenge, psychology professor and author. Great to have you on the show today.
Thanks very much.